In this video, I'm putting head-to-head the best of what Lenovo and Asus have to offer for creative professionals. Recently released the Asus ProArt P16, and released and announced back at CES 2024 is the Lenovo Yoga Pro 9i. Now, both of these laptops are geared towards creative professionals, from the display to the performance to the keyboards, to the trackpad setups. Everything is geared towards creative professionals, even the port selection. So in this video, I'm putting these two laptops head to head to check out the features and functionality to see which one is right for you, as well as diving into the performance to see which one provides the most value to performance opportunity for you as a creative professional. And hopefully by the end of this video, I will help you with a buying decision. Now remember, if you're curious about the exact prices and availability, you can head down in the description below, click those links. If you do make a purchase, I'll get a small commission, but at no extra cost to you. Now, first and foremost, let's talk about the price point, because these two laptops are quite a difference in price point. The MSRP for the RTX 4060 version of the Lenovo Yoga Pro 9i is around $1,899. That comes with 32 gigs of RAM and the Intel Core Ultra 9 185H. Keep in mind, I've often seen the Yoga Pro 9i on sale at bestbuy.com, so definitely want to check the links if right now is one of those times that it's on sale. Now, shifting over to the Asus ProArt P16, there's currently 3 models available at the recording of this video. We have the RTX 4060 with 32 gigs of RAM, and that comes in at $1,899. We have the RTX 4070 with 32 gigs of RAM, which comes in at $2,299. And then we have the RTX 4070 with 64 gigs of RAM, and that comes in at $2,699. So the RTX 4060s are neck and neck, but I want you to keep in mind for this video, right now I only have the RTX 4070, but something very interesting, and I don't want you to turn away from this video because I want to show you the performance benchmarks. These laptops, with the configurations that they are set up at right now, are actually more similar than you would expect. And remember, this has a 4070 and this has a 4060. So hang on for the performance benchmarks. So those are the pricing options that you have at the recording of this video. Now let's go ahead and jump into the features and functionalities of these two laptops. First and foremost, the weight and thickness. The Asus ProArt P16 is a bit thinner than the Yoga, as well as not having as much height, as you could say, like this way. So if we were to set the laptops up this way, this one would be a little bit taller. So keep that in mind. So the Yoga is a bit bigger in form factor. Now, regards to the weight, the Yoga feels a little bit heavier as well, but I'll put the exact weight and thickness up on the screen right now so you can see for yourself. So a little bit smaller of a form factor for the P16. Now going ahead and flipping the laptops over, you can see the ventilation. So for the P16, we have the 2 fans, which you can see here, and then the thermal pipe. So there's some opening here. Now there's an entire grate that opens up on the Yoga. However, there's a little blocking piece here. It's like a little piece of plastic underneath this aluminum grate. So where the fans actually only come through in these 2 spots, very similar to the P16. So very similar ventilation for both of these laptops. You can see the air is going to be pushed out along the back side of the P16 as well as the complete back of the chassis, whereas we can only have out of the complete back of the chassis on the Yoga Pro 9i. Now you can see we do have downward facing speakers on both laptops, but we also have upward facing speakers. So let's just get into the chassis real quick so I can show you the difference in the size of the upward facing speakers. So you can see here, the upward facing speakers on the Yoga Pro 9 are more tweeters. So they're more for those high pitch sounds, where the P16 speakers are the full speaker with the bass underneath. And I'm gonna give you a quick audio sample of each of them so you can hear what they sound like for yourself. All right, now before we move on too far from checking out the assembly and build quality of these two laptops, let's flip back over and check out the assembly. As you can see, the Yoga Pro 9i has a really nice, smooth design, rounded edges, really nicely fit bottom panel into the side panel. I think they did a really good job. And as we look at the ProArt P16, we do have some rounded edges here, and the bottom panel does fit into the side panel very nicely. However, when you get to the back, the rounded edges go away and we get a little bit more of this sharper 90-degree angle here at this corner. But overall, they're both assembled very well. Now, they both have aluminum top cover, bottom cover, and keyboard deck. So the build quality and build materials is very similar for these two devices. Now, as we go ahead and we apply some press on the top covers, you can see they're both very rigid. Both of them do not depress heavily, which is really nice. Now, let's go and jump into the inside real quick, and we'll show you the screen flex as well. So if we go ahead and do a screen flex test, a pretty rigid top cover on the ProArt P16, and about the same on the Yoga Pro 9i. Now let's go ahead and push between the trackpad and the space bar. You can see both laptops, again, do not have a lot of flex on the top covers or on the keyboard deck. So really good assembly for both laptops. Right now, in my opinion, these two laptops are very neck and neck. Now, I would give a slight edge towards the P16 considering the speakers. You do have a little bit more of a robust full sound from these large upward facing speakers. Now, moving back to the features and functionalities, let's go ahead and check out the ports. On the left side panel of the Yoga Pro 9i, we have our power adapter, which is the same as the P16. Then we have HDMIs. Then we have 2 USB Type-Cs on the Yoga and 1 USB-C on the ProArt. And we have our headphone jack, USB Type-A on the ProArt. However, as we flip over, you can see we have the additional USB-C and an additional USB-A, as well as an SD card reader. However, we have 2 USB Type-A's on the right side of the Yoga Pro 9i and a manual cutoff switch for the webcam. So we do have an advantage of 1 extra port on the Yoga Pro 9i USB Type-A. Now, one thing I don't love about the Yoga Pro 9i, and it's actually featured on the PX13 as well, but not on the P16, is this external power button. I don't like this. To me, it seems like it could be a hazard if something bumps into your computer in your backpack, or if you knock it into something while you're holding it. And I would hate for the power button to get damaged. That's just a concern of mine. And also, the power button doesn't feel very well secured to the chassis. So that's one thing I'm like, ugh, I don't love that. As you can see, the power button is on the interior of the P16 right here. Very nicely placed, very easy to use. So that would be one thing I'm like not stoked about on the Yoga Pro 9i compared to the P16. Now, before we get into the device, let's go ahead and talk about what happens when we pull off the bottom cover. So the bottom cover pulls off pretty easily for each device. And inside the laptop, you have access to 2 M.2 slots on both the P16 and the Yoga Pro 9i. So you can go ahead and upgrade the boot drive, or you can just add an additional M.2 drive to your device. Now, both laptops will not be upgradable in regards to RAM. So the RAM is soldered to the motherboard. So that is something that you want to make sure you purchase the laptop with the right amount of RAM. With the Yoga Pro 9i, you get 32 gigs of RAM. With the P16, you get either 32 or 64, depending on the device that you purchase. Remember, links are in the description below if you want to check the live pricing or make a purchase. Now let's go ahead and keep diving further into the device. As I open up the lid on each of these laptops, you can see that there is a webcam along the top bezel. Here's a quick sample of each webcam in use so you can see what it looks and sounds like. This is the webcam on the Asus ProArt P16 and a little sample of the audio for you as well. This is the webcam on the Lenovo Yoga Pro 9i and a little sample of the audio for you as well. Let's go ahead and take a tour of the keyboard and trackpad, then we'll check out the display on both of these laptops. Now, first and foremost, they both have very nice trackpads. I like the quiet click on the Yoga Pro 9i. It's actually quieter than the P16. The P16 is still very quiet, but it still has a bit of that dull click noise. The Yoga Pro 9i is almost silent to the click. Now I'm gonna go ahead and line these two next to each other so you can see the size differences, and they are merely exactly the same. From what I can tell, the P16 looks slightly taller, but not by much. The width is the same. Now, one thing you'll notice on the P16 is we have the dial. Now, the dial is really neat because you can program it to all kinds of different functions inside of your device. For instance, right now you can see I'm turning the brightness down on the device, and then I'm turning the brightness back up. I can go ahead and click out, switch over to volume, and then I can turn the volume down and I can turn the volume up. Now, this can actually be programmed into, say, Premiere Pro or Photoshop, so you can change your brush size, switch between brushes, scroll through the timeline, whatever you commonly do on a day-to-day basis within your workflow, you can program into the dial. So maybe you have certain shortcuts you like to use or certain tools you like to use a lot, and you find yourself having to go into menus or click keyboard shortcuts. Well, you can actually program a lot of that directly into the dial. Really nice feature and functionality that gives it an advantage over something, say, like the Yoga Pro 9i, which does not have that. Now, moving on to the keyboard. On my channel, I have a full playlist of the Asus ProArt series where I dive deep into the dial. And so that content will be coming out, and if it is already available, it will be in that playlist. And you can check out the features and functionality and usability of the dial if you want to learn more. All right, now let's go ahead and take a look at the keyboards. Numpad on the right side of the Yoga Pro 9i, no numpad on the P16. Now, I have a lot of people comment below the videos, and they say, I do not know any creator that does not use the numpad. The numpad is an extremely essential tool for creators, and so it's odd, some may say, that the P16 does not come with a numpad. However, myself, I never use a numpad while creating, and I've been producing videos and been in design school for, oh gosh, almost 15 years. So for me, it's not an essential, and I prefer the sleek, trimmed down design of the P16 with the upward facing speakers. However, I know a lot of you find the numpad advantageous. Now, in regard to the actual feel of each of the keyboards, the Yoga Pro 9i is very quiet. I would say it's the same noise as the P16. So both keyboards are very nice. They both have the full-size shift keys, very similar keyboard layouts outside of the numpad. Now, another thing that may be an advantage to you is that the P16 has a centered trackpad on the keyboard deck, where the Yoga Pro 9i is pushed to the left. And that, for me, is kind of annoying. I know a lot of people agree with me. Some don't. Some might be a left-handed user and enjoy that the trackpad is pushed to the left a little bit. Now, before we go on, here is a quick sample of me using the keyboard and trackpad so you can hear what they sound like in use. All right, let's go on and take a look at the display. First and foremost, you can see that the screen opens completely flat on the Yoga Pro 9i, where it opens up to about a 45 on the P16. Now, both displays are glossy, so you're going to have that reflective experience. If you're in a bright room or you're outside, it will be a very reflective display. So really, either device that you pick up is going to be that situation. Now, they're both 3K displays. The Yoga Pro 9i is a 3.2K, where the P16 is a 3K display. They both have very good color accuracy and color gamut range. You can see that the Yoga Pro 9i has a slightly better Delta E. So let's look at this real quick. We have 425 nits of screen brightness at 100% sRGB, 90% Adobe RGB, and 97% DCI-P3 at a Delta E of 0.79 for the Yoga Pro 9i. For the P16, we have a 498 nits screen brightness, 100% sRGB, 98% Adobe RGB, and 99% DCI-P3 at a Delta E of 1.09. So slightly more color accurate out of the Yoga Pro 9i, but a slightly higher color gamut range from the P16. So truly tomato for these two devices. Now, another thing to check out is that we have rounded edges on the screen bezel for the Yoga Pro 9i, where we have the traditional 90-degree angle on the P16. And one very important thing to point out on these two devices, the P16 is pen compatible with the Asus Pen 2.0. The Yoga Pro 9i is a touchscreen, but it is not pen compatible. So you can see the footage coming up on the screen with me utilizing the pen on the P16. It has great touch sensitivity. The pen works very well, it's responsive, and because the screen does not go past that 45-degree angle, it makes it very easy to use the pen, because when you push on the screen doesn't drop down. Let's say the Yoga Pro 9i was pen compatible and I went to push on the screen and draw, it would push itself down. Whereas you can see with the P16, it doesn't move. I mean, it bounces, it kind of bounces a tiny bit if I do this, but it's not going to drop down on me to where it would be inconvenient and I'd have to be holding the screen in place to keep it from falling over. So though it would be nice to have maybe a little bit more viewing angle on the P16, it's even nicer that the screen doesn't drop down on you while you're trying to draw on it. Now let's talk about battery life. They're actually very similar. We have roughly 9 hours of streaming video playback on both of these devices. However, for productivity, the P16 gets a little bit better battery life. I guess the optimization of the components while you're doing low power tasks is a little bit better. The distribution of power inside of the CPU handles that better. So we have a little bit better battery life with the P16 in that regard. But then when you get into Photoshop and video editing, very similar battery life performance. Now, one more thing I want to point out on the display before we move on is the attention to detail, the little nuances that I really like. There's this stippled design around the entire bezel of the screen. There's like these tiny little notches that are put into the screen. And I just think it's a very nice extra touch. Care for the details. I really, really do like it. It just really puts a nice refining edge on the P16. So far, before we get into the performance benchmarks, which device are you leaning towards, the P16 or the Yoga Pro 9i? Also, if you're considering another device to the P16, please comment below and let me know what you want me to compare to the P16. I would love to make some more videos to help you out in making this decision. It's a super important one, picking the device you need for your creator needs. And so I want to make as many videos as possible to help you out. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the thermal management. This was something very interesting, and I wasn't sure which one would perform better. Now, what we did is we took a 4K clip, placed it in Premiere Pro, and exported it out at full quality 4K settings. Now, the P16 exported unplugged from the charger, so on battery only, in whisper mode in 4 minutes and 42 seconds. It had an average temperature of about 62 to 67 degrees Celsius and a fan noise of 35 to 40 decibels. Now, compare that with the Yoga Pro 9i. We had quiet mode set, battery power only. It took 3 minutes and 9 seconds, so a little bit faster. We saw the thermals starting out at about 47 degrees Celsius and then peaking up at around 64 degrees Celsius. Some of the cores got upwards of 80 degrees, but as a whole, the average thermal temperature was around 64 at its height. Now, looking at the decibels, we saw 33 to 38 decibels of fan noise. So you can see that the thermal management of the Yoga Pro 9i and the export time was a little bit better than the P16. Now let's dive into the final decision maker, and that is the performance. We're going to look at these two devices. Remember, we have Intel Core Ultra 9 185H with an RTX 4060 and 32 gigs of RAM in the Yoga Pro 9i. And inside of the Asus ProArt P16, we have the AMD Ryzen AI 9 HX 3070, RTX 4070, and 32 gigs of RAM. Now, the maximum graphics power on the Yoga Pro 9i, that means the amount of power that is delivered to the GPU through the system, is 100 watts. The maximum graphics power on the P16 is 105 watts, so slightly higher. Let's go ahead and jump into the simulated benchmarks. You can see first and foremost that the P16 takes a little bit of a jump on the Yoga Pro 9i for both Geekbench and for Cinebench 2024. However, as we get into the 3D modeling benchmarks, you can see that these laptops are nearly neck and neck. Now, the P16 does edge out the Yoga Pro 9i a little bit, but remember, we have an RTX 4070 and 105 watts of maximum graphics power versus an RTX 4060 and 100 watts of maximum graphics power. So it's really cool to see the Yoga Pro 9i keeping pace with the P16. But there's actually going to be a result where the Yoga Pro 9i wins out. And this one is pretty advantageous to myself and might be something for you. Now, going on and moving into Photoshop, you can see we have a 7,397 for the Yoga Pro 9i, and for the P16, we have a 7,855. Working our way down the line, let's get into video editing. First and foremost, let's check out the playback. Which device can play back that 6K footage better? Now, for the Yoga Pro 9i, we have 50 drop frames for 6K B-RAW and 671 for red footage. Compared to the P16, where we did not have drop frames for B-RAW, I mean, 50 drop frames to the Yoga Pro 9i actually isn't even noticeable, but we still had some drop frames. The P16 had no drop frames, and then 403 drop frames for 6K red footage. Now let's go ahead and check out the 4K export time plugged into power. So once we got plugged into power and gave it all the power that it would want to consume to give us the fastest export time possible, we saw a 2 minute and 17-second export time out of the Yoga Pro 9i for the 4K export, and 2 minutes and 29 seconds from the P16. Remember, that's a 9-minute 4K clip placed in Premiere Pro, exported out at full quality 4K settings. Now here's the dinger. 16 minutes and 57 seconds for the 6K B-RAW export time out of the P16, compared to the Yoga Pro 9i at 13 minutes and 28 seconds. The Yoga Pro 9i beats out the P16 by over 3 minutes on the export. Quite impressive. Quite a little monster, I must say. In conclusion, which one would I recommend? Well, let's talk about the unique features of each one. When it comes to the Yoga Pro 9i, you have a little bit of an edge for the video editing export times, especially for 6K. We have a fantastic 3K display, a large trackpad, the numpad on the right side. However, it isn't pen compatible, and you're missing the feature of the dial. But at the price point, because if you look at the P16, this is the RTX 4070 getting similar performance to the 4060, okay? So at the price point of the P16, it's a bit more money. So you can save a little money and still get great performance out of the Yoga Pro 9i. I want to be able to test the RTX 4060 at some point, but I've not been able to get my hands on one. So the RTX 4070 is the one that had the testing done. With the P16, we have the very nice upward-facing speakers, similar 3K display. However, this one is pen compatible with the Asus Pen 2.0. We have the dial. If you want to integrate that into your workflow and increase your productivity, that would be a big advantage to you. Upward-facing speakers for really great quality audio experience, and a simplified keyboard deck without the numpad, which for me personally, I like better. We also have the power button on the inside, which again is another personal thing that I really do like better. Then we go to the decision of the aesthetics. Which device do you like better? Do you like the Yoga Pro 9i, or do you like the ProArt P16? They have their own unique stylings, and really it's going to come down to what you want personally. Now, on top of all of that, we have a bit thinner of a device with the P16. So those are the individual differences that would help me make my buying decision. I think the pen compatibility for myself and the simplified keyboard deck would lean me personally towards the P16. And I do like that it's a slightly smaller form factor, and the upward-facing speakers are really nice. But let me know, which one would you buy? Links in the description below if you're ready to make a purchase, or click or tap the screen here for more videos to help you with your buying decision. I'll see you in the next one.